Zara pressed her child closer to her chest as they walked through the crowded corridors of Kepler Station. The little one's breathing was getting weaker each day, and those beautiful violet eyes that once sparkled with curiosity now looked tired and dim. Every mother knows that sound when their child struggles to breathe, and it was breaking her heart piece by piece. The space station buzzed with activity around them. Traders from dozens of different worlds called out their wares. Strange smells mixed in the recycled air, and the constant hum of machinery never stopped. But all Zara could focus on was the weight of the medical report in her hand, and the even heavier weight of knowing she was running out of time. Her species, the Velinari, were known across the galaxy for their ability to sense emotions, right? Now, that gift felt more like a curse. She could feel the pity from some passersby, the disgust from others who saw her worn clothes and desperate appearance, and worst of all, the indifference from most who simply didn't care about another struggling alien mother. Zara had tried everything. She'd applied for work at 17 different establishments in the past 3 days. Each time, the answer was the same. We don't hire your kind. You have no skills we need. Come back when you can work without that child hanging off you. The rejection stung, but not as much as watching her baby get sicker while she failed to find a solution. The Velinari wasting syndrome was cruel in its simplicity. Without proper treatment, children simply faded away over the course of a few months. The medicine existed, but it cost more than most families on her homeworld made in 5 years. Insurance didn't cover it because her people were considered a minor species in galactic terms. That was just a polite way of saying they didn't matter enough. She found herself standing outside the employment district's most desperate section. The signs were written in multiple languages, but they all said the same thing: last resort services, extended contracts available, immediate payment options. Everyone knew what these places really were, but nobody talked about it openly. The building looked clean enough from the outside, but Zara's empathic abilities picked up waves of sadness and resignation from inside. Other beings had stood where she was standing, facing the same impossible choice. Some had walked away, others had gone inside and never come back the same. Her child stirred in her arms and looked up at her with those fading eyes. "Mama, are we going home soon?" The voice was barely a whisper, but it hit Zara like a physical blow. Home was a tiny apartment on a mining colony where the air was thick with dust, and hope was even thinner. There was nothing there that could save her baby. "Soon, little star," she whispered back, using the pet name she'd called her child since birth. "Mom is going to fix everything." The door to the employment center slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the lighting was softer, and the air smelled of cleaning products trying to mask something else. Behind a curved desk sat a Thurian, one of those lizard-like beings who seemed to show up wherever there was profit to be made from others' misfortune. "Welcome, welcome," the Thurian said, his translator making his voice sound artificially cheerful. "I am Brix, and I help beings find extended employment opportunities. Please, sit." Zara sat in the chair across from him, adjusting her child. In her lap, Brix's eyes immediately went to the medical scanner readings she'd placed on the desk. His expression shifted to something that might have been sympathy if she didn't know better. "Velinari wasting syndrome," he said, reading the report. "Expensive condition to treat." "Very expensive, but you're in luck. I have several contracts available for your species. The terms are quite generous." He pulled up a holographic display showing various contract options. Zara's heart sank as she read through them. Domestic service, manual labor, research assistant. All of them had one thing in common: 10-year minimum terms with payment upfront. 10 years. She said quietly, "I wouldn't see my child grow up." "But your child would grow up," Brix replied smoothly. "Isn't that what matters?" The payment from any of these contracts would cover the full treatment, plus living expenses for your little one. Foster care services are included in the package. The words hit her like ice water. Foster care. Her baby would grow up with strangers while she spent the best years of her life working for someone else. But her baby would live. That was the only thing that mattered now. "What exactly would I be doing?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. That depends on who purchases your contract, Bricks explained. Could be household management, could be research assistance, could be companionship services. The buyer has full discretion within legal boundaries, of course, legal boundaries. Zara knew enough about galactic law to understand how flexible those could be, especially when it came to her species. The Velinari had no powerful allies, no economic leverage, no voice in the Galactic Council. They were easy to exploit, and even easier to ignore. Her child coughed. A wet sound that sent panic through her chest. Time was running out, and she knew it. Every day of delay meant less chance the treatment would work. Every hour she spent looking for alternatives was an hour stolen from her baby's future. I need to think about it, she started to say, but Bricks held up a scaled hand. Of course, but I should mention, I have a potential buyer arriving within the hour. Human trader, very reputable. If you're interested, the timing could be perfect. A human. Zara had heard stories about humans, most of them contradictory. Some said they were generous and kind, others warned they were unpredictable and violent. She'd never met one personally, but she'd heard they had a tendency to form emotional attachments to other species, which could be good or bad depending on the human. Her child's breathing grew more labored, and she made her decision. I'll do it. I'll sign the contract. Bricks's smile widened, showing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent choice. Let me prepare the paperwork. Standard 10-year service contract with immediate payment release. Your child will be in the medical bay within 6 hours. As she signed her name on the digital pad, Zara felt like she was signing away her soul. But when she looked down at her dying child, she knew she was actually signing away her freedom to save a life more precious than her own. That was what mothers did, wasn't it? They sacrificed everything for their children, even when it meant losing everything that made life worth living. The waiting area was quiet except for the soft hum of air recyclers. Other beings sat in similar chairs, all wearing the same expression of quiet desperation. A few looked like they were there voluntarily, seeking adventure or opportunity. Most looked like her, people who had run out of choices and were trading their freedom for someone else's survival. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships coming and going from the docking bays. One of them might belong to her future owner. In a few hours, she would belong to someone she'd never met, someone who could demand anything from her within the bounds of galactic law. The thought terrified her, but not as much as the thought of watching her child fade away while she stood helpless. The buyer is here, Bricks announced, his voice cutting through her dark thoughts. Human male, very professional. He's reviewing your file now. Zara's empathic abilities immediately picked up new emotions in the room. Curiosity, concern, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Through the office's glass partition, she could see a tall human with graying hair examining her medical records and contract details. His face was hard to read, but his emotional signature felt different from what she expected. There was sadness there, old and deep, but also something that felt like determination. Their eyes met through the glass for just a moment. She expected to see ownership in his gaze, the look of someone examining a purchase. Instead, she saw recognition, as if he understood exactly what this moment meant for her. It was the look of someone who had stood where she was standing, facing an impossible choice with no good options. The human nodded to Bricks and handed over a credit chip. Just like that, her life belonged to someone else. But her child would live, and that made every sacrifice worth it. The human walked into the room with quiet confidence, and Zara immediately felt the shift in atmosphere. Unlike the desperate energy that had filled the space moments before, he brought something else with him, calm, maybe. Or perhaps it was just the certainty that came with having credits to spend. While others had nothing left to sell but themselves. I'm Dr. Chen, he said simply, extending a hand toward Bricks. His voice was deeper than she expected, with a gentle quality that didn't match the hardness around his eyes. Those eyes had seen things, lost things. Her empathic abilities picked up layers of old pain wrapped around a core of stubborn hope. Bricks practically rubbed his hands together with glee. Doctor, excellent timing. This is Zara, exactly what you're looking for. Velinari female, healthy, intelligent, and very motivated to please her new employer. The way he said it made her skin crawl, like she was livestock being sold at market. Dr. Chen glanced at her briefly, then back at Bricks. I've reviewed the medical files you sent. The child needs immediate treatment. Of course. Of course, once the contract transfer is complete, payment will be released and the little one can begin treatment within hours. Standard processing. Time no. The single word cut through Bricks' sales pitch like a blade. Treatment starts now. Before any paperwork is signed. Non-negotiable. Zara looked up sharply. That wasn't how these things worked. Payment came after ownership transfer. Never before. Bricks' confusion was obvious even without empathic abilities. But doctor, that's highly irregular. What if the contract falls through? What if there are complications with the payment transfer? Dr. Chen pulled out a credit chip and placed it on the desk. The small device probably contained more money than Zara had seen in her entire life. Full payment, right now. Get the child to the medical bay immediately. We'll handle the paperwork afterward. Her baby stirred in her arms at the sound of voices. Those beautiful violet eyes opening briefly before closing again with exhaustion. The sight seemed to affect the human doctor more than she expected. His jaw tightened, and she felt a spike of what could only be described as protective anger radiating from him. I'll arrange the medical transport right away, Bricks said. Suddenly all business as he processed the payment. Most generous, doctor. Most generous indeed. Within minutes, medical technicians arrived with a specialized carrier designed for young. Velinari, Zara's arms felt empty as they gently took her child, and she had to fight every instinct that screamed at her to hold on. Her baby was so small in that big medical carrier, surrounded by monitoring equipment and 4 lines. Mama will see you soon, little star, she whispered, touching the carrier's transparent side. Her child's hand pressed against the inside, tiny fingers splayed against the barrier between them. As they wheeled her baby away toward the medical bay, Zara felt something inside her chest crack. This was it. This was the moment her old life ended and her new one began. Whatever happened next, she was no longer a free being making her own choices. She belonged to the human now, and she had no idea what that would mean. Dr. Chen finished the paperwork with efficient movements, asking practical questions about her dietary needs and health requirements. Nothing personal, nothing that suggested he saw her as anything more than an acquisition. That should have been reassuring, but instead it left her feeling hollow. Your ship is in Bay 94, Bricks informed them. All documentation has been forwarded to your personal files. Pleasure doing business with you. Doctor, the walk through the station corridors felt like a death march. Other beings moved around them, with purpose and freedom, heading to destinations of their own choosing. Zara walked beside her new owner, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of fear. Dr. Chen's ship was larger than she expected, clearly designed for long-distance travel with comfortable quarters. The name Endeavor was painted on the hull in both standard and several alien scripts. As they walked up the loading ramp, she caught glimpses of the crew preparing for departure. What surprised her was how they looked at her, not with the mixture of pity and disgust she'd grown accustomed to on the station, but with something closer to welcome. A blue-skinned Andorian nodded respectfully as they passed. A human woman with graying hair smiled and said, "Welcome aboard." These people worked for Dr. Chen, but they didn't act like servants or property. They moved with confidence and familiarity, like they belonged here by choice rather than contract. It was confusing and somehow made her situation feel even more uncertain. Her quarters were not what she expected at all. Instead of a cramped storage room or converted cargo space, she found herself in a proper cabin with a real bed, a desk, and even a small viewport showing the stars beyond. The environmental controls were already adjusted for Velinari comfort levels, and there were books on the shelf about her species, culture, and history. Get some rest, Dr. Chen said from the doorway. We'll be departing within the hour. The medical bay on my research station is better equipped than anything here. Your child will receive the best possible care. Why? The word slipped out before She could stop it. Why are you doing this? He paused in the doorway, and for a moment his carefully controlled expression slipped. She caught a glimpse of something raw and painful underneath. Everyone deserves a chance to save the people they love. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving her alone with questions that multiplied by the minute. This wasn't how these arrangements usually worked. She'd heard stories from others who'd sold themselves into service contracts, cramped quarters, basic nutrition, work assignments that started immediately, not comfortable cabins, and medical care that began before ownership was even official. Her empathic abilities had been picking up emotional signatures from Dr. Chen. That didn't match what she expected from someone who'd just purchased a servant. There was no sense of ownership or control, no satisfaction from acquiring property. Instead, she sensed something that felt almost like guilt, mixed with a determination that Rambone dashed deep through the viewport. She could see shuttles moving back and forth between the medical bay and various ships. One of them might be carrying her child right now, racing toward treatment that could save a life she'd almost given up hope of preserving. The thought brought tears to her eyes, but whether they were from relief or terror, she couldn't tell. The ship began to move, and she felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity adjusting as they left the station's docking bay. Somewhere in the medical facility behind them, her baby was receiving care from the best doctors credits could buy. She should feel grateful, and part of her did, but mostly she felt lost. Her entire identity had been wrapped up in being a mother, a protector, someone who would do anything to keep her child safe. Now her child was in the hands of strangers, and she belonged to someone whose motivation she couldn't understand. What was she supposed to be now? What did he want from her that justified such an expensive purchase? The questions followed her into an uneasy sleep as the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying her toward a future she couldn't predict and a new life she'd never chosen. But somewhere behind them, her child was alive and getting stronger. And that thought was the only thing that made any of this bearable. In her dreams, she held her baby close while violet eyes sparkled with health and curiosity. In her dreams, they were still free, but when she woke up, she would belong to Dr. Chen, and everything she thought she knew about servitude and ownership would begin to change in ways she never expected. The first thing Zara noticed about Dr. Chen's research station wasn't the advanced technology or the impressive size. It was the sound of laughter echoing through the corridors as they docked. Real, genuine laughter from beings who seemed happy to be where they were. It was the last thing she expected to hear in a place where she'd been brought as purchased property. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Dr. Chen said as they walked through the docking bay. The name felt like a cruel joke to her. What harmony could there be for someone in her situation? But as they moved deeper into the facility, she began to see what he meant. The corridors were wide and bright, with viewing windows that showed the planet's surface below. Unlike the cramped, profit-focused design of most space stations, this place felt like it was built for living, not just working. Gardens grew in specially designed chambers, and she could see beings from dozens of different species moving around with purpose and contentment. "This doesn't look like a research station," she said quietly, afraid to speak too loudly in case it broke whatever spell was keeping this place peaceful. "It's not just research," Dr. Chen replied. "We study life, but we also protect it, preserve it. Sometimes that means giving creatures a second chance when their own worlds have failed them." They passed a large viewing area where she could see into what looked like a medical facility. Her heart jumped when she spotted a small form in one of the treatment pods, even from a distance. She recognized her child's distinctive violet markings. "Can I see?" she started to ask, but Dr. Chen was already changing direction toward the medical bay. The attending physician was elderly, Villanari female whose presence immediately made Zara feel less alone. Dr. Kala had the traditional healer's markings on her arms and the kind of gentle authority that came from decades of saving lives. "Your little one is responding beautifully to treatment," Dr. Kala said with a warm smile. The syndrome was caught just in time. Another week, and she didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew how close they'd come to losing hope entirely. Through the transparent wall of the treatment chamber, Zara could see her child sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. The labored breathing was gone, replaced by the steady rhythm of healthy lungs. Those beautiful violet eyes that had grown so dim were already showing signs of returning brightness. The treatment here is more advanced than anything available on the core worlds. Dr. Kala continued. Dr. Chen has been working on improved therapies for vulnerary wasting syndrome for over 3 years now. Your child is actually helping us test the latest version. Zara looked at Dr. Chen with new confusion. 3 years? But why would you study diseases that only affect my people? We're not exactly an important species in galactic terms. Something painful flashed across his face before he could hide it. Every species is important. Every life matters. I learned that lesson the hard way. Dr. Kala excused herself to check on other patients, leaving them alone with the sleeping child. The silence stretched between them, filled with questions Zara didn't know how to ask and answers Dr. Chen seemed reluctant to give. I need to show you something, he said finally. Something that will help you understand why you're really here. They took a transport pod to another section of the station. This one clearly dedicated to serious research. The laboratories were state-of-the-art, filled with equipment that probably cost more than most planets' annual budgets. But what caught Zara's attention were the holographic displays showing molecular structures and genetic sequences that she somehow recognized. This is Velinari DNA, she said, staring at the complex patterns floating in the air. But I've never seen it mapped in such detail. We've been working to understand the exact mechanism of wasting syndrome, Dr. Chen explained. The current treatments only address symptoms. I want to find a cure that prevents it from ever developing. He activated another display, and Zara gasped. It showed environmental data from her homeworld, tracking the introduction of industrial chemicals over the past century. The timeline perfectly matched the first recorded cases of wasting syndrome. Your people aren't sick because of genetics, Dr. Chen said quietly. You're sick because of what mining corporations did to your world's atmosphere. The syndrome is actually a form of slow poisoning that affects developing children. Most severely, the revelation hit her like a physical blow. Her child suffering, her own desperate situation, the countless families torn apart by this disease, all of it could have been prevented if the corporations had simply used proper environmental controls. But why do you care? She asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. Why would a human spend years researching a disease that affects a species most people have never heard of? Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the holographic displays as if they held answers to questions he'd been asking himself for years. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I had a family once, wife, daughter. They lived on a mining colony where I was doing research. He paused, and she could feel waves of old grief radiating from him. The corporation running the mines cut corners on safety equipment. Toxic gas leak. I was off-world when it happened. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. His knowledge of her species, his immediate concern for her child, the way he paid for treatment before even completing the purchase. He wasn't buying a servant. He was trying to save a family he couldn't save his own. I'm so sorry, she said, and meant it. Her empathic abilities let her feel the depth of his loss, the guilt he carried for not being there when his family needed him most. I failed them, he continued, but maybe I don't have to fail others. When I learned about wasting syndrome and realized it was another case of corporate negligence destroying families, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. So you've been developing a cure in secret? Not just a cure, a treatment that can be mass-produced cheaply and distributed freely. No patents, no profit margins, no corporate control. Just medicine that saves children's lives. Zara looked around the laboratory with new understanding. This wasn't about owning her or exploiting her knowledge. This was about finishing work that could save thousands of families from going through what she'd experienced. But you still bought my contract, she pointed out. You still own me legally. Dr. Chen turned to face her fully, and she saw something in his expression that took her breath away. It was respect. the kind reserved for equals rather than property. I bought your contract because it was the only way to get you and your child to safety quickly, he said. But I don't want to own you, Zara. I want to work with you. Your cultural knowledge and biological understanding of your species could help us perfect this cure yours faster than we could manage alone. He pulled up another holographic display, this one showing legal documents. These are partnership agreements. Equal shares in any discoveries we make together. Full citizenship status that makes your contract null and void. The choice is yours. For the first time since this nightmare began, Zara felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope, real hope, not just for her child's survival, but for a future where other parents wouldn't have to face the same impossible choices she'd faced. You're offering me my freedom? I'm offering you the chance to help save your people, he replied. The freedom was always yours to take. I just had to get you somewhere safe first. Looking at her sleeping child through the medical bay windows, then back at the research that could prevent other children from suffering the same fate, Zara realized she'd found something she never expected when she signed that contract. She'd found purpose beyond mere survival, and maybe, just maybe, she'd found hope for a better tomorrow. 3 weeks into their partnership, Zara stood in the laboratory watching Dr. Chen work with the focused intensity of someone who'd found his life's purpose. The research had taken on new dimensions with her help, and breakthrough followed breakthrough, as her cultural insights revealed patterns that pure science had missed. The traditional healing ceremonies, she explained, pointing to molecular structures on the holographic display, my grandmother used to brew teas from certain plants during the rainy season. She said they helped children fight off the weakness sickness. I thought it was just old folklore. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. Those plants contain natural compounds that counteract the industrial toxins. Your people developed folk remedies without even knowing what they were fighting. Incredible. Working together felt natural in a way that surprised them both. Where Dr. Chen had raw scientific knowledge, Zara brought generations of accumulated wisdom from her people. Where she lacked technical training, he filled the gaps with patient explanation. They were becoming a real team, and for the first time since leaving Kepler Station, Zara felt like she had value beyond her desperation. Her child was thriving under Dr. Kayla's care. The little one had regained that spark of curiosity that made Velinari children so delightful, constantly asking questions and exploring every corner of the medical bay that was deemed safe. What touched Zara's heart most was how Dr. Chen had taken to spending his lunch breaks reading stories to her child. Uncle Chen, tell me about the star whales again, her little one would demand. Using the title of respect that had emerged naturally, Dr. Chen would settle into the chair beside the treatment bed and spin tales of massive creatures that swam through space between distant galaxies, his serious demeanor softening into something almost paternal. Watching them together stirred emotions in Zara that she wasn't prepared for. Her child had never known a father figure, and seeing this gentle human man fill that role with such obvious care created a warmth in her chest that felt dangerous. She couldn't afford to get attached. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. But the attachment was happening whether she wanted it or not. Dr. Chen, she said one evening as they reviewed their latest test results, why aren't you married? You're clearly good with children, and you have so much to offer. He paused in his work, and she immediately regretted asking such a personal question. The pain that crossed his face reminded her that some wounds never fully healed. After I lost my family, he said slowly, I couldn't imagine trying to build that kind of life again. What if I failed them too? What if I wasn't there when they needed me most? But you're here for us, she pointed out gently. You've saved my child's life and given me hope for the future. That counts for something. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. That's different. This is work. Important work, but still work. The comment stung more than it should have. Was that really all this was to him? Professional collaboration with convenient emotional benefits. She tried to push down the disappointment, focusing instead on the progress they were making. Their breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, when Zara suggested combining traditional Velinari purification rituals with Dr. Chen's chemical treatments. The results were better than anything they'd achieved separately. The cure wasn't just effective now, it was perfect. We did it, Dr. Chen said, staring at the test results in amazement. This could help every Velinari child in the galaxy. Their celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from Dr. Kala. Someone had been asking questions about their research. Someone with connections to the mining corporations. That had caused the problem in the first place. Word was getting out. And that meant trouble. Megacorp Industries has been making inquiries. Dr. Kala explained when they reached the medical bay. They want to know who's been studying Velinari diseases and why. Their legal team has already filed preliminary claims stating that any treatments developed using data from their mining operations belongs to them. The news hit like a cold wave. Everything they'd worked for could be stolen by the same people who caused the suffering in the first place. Zara felt her old fears returning. The helplessness of being small and powerless in a galaxy that didn't care about her people. They can't do that, she said. But even as she spoke, she knew they probably could. Corporate law favored whoever had the most credits and the best lawyers. Actually, they can. Dr. Chen said grimly. Unless we can prove the research was conducted by free citizens working as equal partners, rather than by corporate employees or contracted servants, the words hung in the air between them. Zara's legal status was still technically that of an indentured servant, despite the partnership agreements Dr. Chen had offered. If Megacorp's lawyers could prove she was just his property when the research was conducted, they could claim ownership of everything she contributed. We need to make your citizenship official, Dr. Chen continued, and we need to do it before their legal team arrives. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and legal procedures. Dr. Chen contacted every favor he was owed, calling in debts from colleagues across the galaxy to expedite Zara's citizenship application. The process normally took months, but with the right pressure in the right places, it could be done in days. While they waited for the legal machinery to grind through its paces, life on the station took on an odd tension. Everyone knew something important was happening, but only a few knew the details. Zara found herself looking over her shoulder, expecting corporate security forces to arrive at any moment. Her child, blissfully unaware of the adult complications, continued to recover at an amazing pace. Dr. Kala declared the treatment complete, though she recommended staying on the station for another month to monitor for any complications. Mama, why do you look worried? Her little one asked during their evening walk through the station's garden habitat. Uncle Chen says we're safe here. Uncle Chen is a very good man, Zara replied, realizing as she said it how true those words were. But sometimes good people have to fight bad people to protect the things that matter. Are you going to fight if I have to? That night, Dr. Chen found her in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars and thinking about everything that had brought her to this moment. A few months ago, she'd been desperate and alone, selling herself into servitude to save her child. Now she was on the verge of becoming a free citizen, an equal partner in research that could save thousands of lives. Having second thoughts, he asked, settling into the chair beside her. About which part? The citizenship, the research, or trusting a human I barely know with everything that matters to me? Any of it, all of it. She was quiet for a long moment, searching for words that could express the complexity of her feelings. I never expected kindness, she said finally. I thought I was trading my freedom for my child's life. And that was the end of it? I never imagined finding this purpose, partnership, something that feels almost like a family. The word hung between them, loaded with possibilities and dangers neither of them had fully acknowledged. Because that's what this was becoming, wasn't it? Not just professional collaboration or convenient cooperation, but something deeper. Something that felt like coming home. After a lifetime of wandering, would that be so terrible? Dr. Chen asked. Quietly. Zara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the professional demeanor to the lonely man underneath. He needed this as much as she did. The chance to build something good from the ashes of his loss, the opportunity to be part of a family again instead of just existing in the empty spaces grief had carved out of his life. No, she said softly, it wouldn't be terrible at all. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small moments of connection that sometimes bloomed between the beings who traveled among them. But inside the observation lounge, to people who had lost everything discovered they might just have found something worth fighting for. The corporate lawyers arrived on a Tuesday morning like vultures circling fresh prey. 3 ships bearing Megacorp Industries logos docked at Harmony Station, and Zara felt her stomach drop as she watched them through the observation windows. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd built together, was about to be challenged by people who saw profit where she saw hope. Dr. Chen. We need to talk immediately, the lead lawyer announced as he swept into the research facility with 2 assistants trailing behind him. He was human, expensively dressed, and carried himself with the arrogance of someone who'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. Mr. Davidson, Dr. Chen replied coolly. I was wondering when you'd show up. Our client has legitimate concerns about intellectual property theft, Davidson continued, pulling out a tablet loaded with legal documents. Research conducted using data derived from our mining operations belongs to Megacorp Industries. We're prepared to offer compensation for your time, but the cure formula and all related research must be transferred to our medical division. Immediately, Zara felt her hands clenching into fists. These were the same people whose careless greed had poisoned her world and sentenced countless children to suffer. Now they wanted to own the cure so they could profit from the very disease they'd created. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Dr. Chen said calmly. This research was conducted by free citizens working as equal partners. Megacorp has no claim to our discoveries. Davidson smiled the kind of smile that made Zara's skin crawl. Actually, Dr. Chen, we do. Our investigation shows that your primary research partner is an indentured servant purchased through a service contract. Any work performed by contracted personnel belongs to their legal owner, which makes it property of whoever holds the contract. In this case, you. And since you developed this research as an employee of various institutions that have licensing agreements with us, one of the assistants added, that makes us the ultimate owners of any discoveries made using our proprietary data. The legal web they were weaving was complex, but its purpose was simple. They wanted to steal the cure and lock it away until they could figure out how to make maximum profit from it. Children would continue to die while corporate executives decided on pricing strategies. You're forgetting something important, Zara said, stepping forward. Her voice was steady despite the fear racing through her veins. I'm not an indentured servant anymore. She pulled out the citizenship papers that had arrived just 3 days earlier. The official seal of the Galactic Council gleamed on the documents that declared her a free citizen, with full rights and protections under interstellar law. Davidson barely glanced at the papers. Convenient timing, but irrelevant. The research was conducted while you were still under contract. The law is clear about ownership of work performed by contracted individuals. Then let me make something else clear, Dr. Chen said, his voice taking on an edge that made even the lawyers pause. Zara hasn't been my servant for a single day since she arrived here. The contract was nullified the moment she stepped aboard my ship, and I have the documentation to prove it. He activated a holographic display showing legal documents, dated from their first day aboard the Endeavor. Every form was properly filed, every signature authenticated, every detail legally bulletproof. Impossible, Davidson sputtered. The contract broker confirmed the sale was completed according to standard protocols. The sale was completed, Dr. Chen agreed, and then immediately voided by mutual consent between legal equals. Zara has been my research partner from day one, entitled to equal shares in any discoveries we've made together. The lawyers huddled together, clearly not expecting this level of legal preparation. While they whispered furiously among themselves, Dr. Chen leaned closer to Zara. I told you the freedom was always yours to take, he said quietly. I just wanted to make sure the paperwork reflected reality. The realization hit her like a warm wave. He'd been protecting her from the very beginning. not just from immediate danger, but from exactly this kind of legal challenge. Every document had been prepared to ensure she could never be exploited or have her contributions stolen. Davidson looked up from his huddle with renewed determination. Even if we accept your claims about Ms. Zara's status, the fundamental research data came from our mining operations. We still maintain ownership rights over any discoveries derived from that information. Actually, you don't, said a new voice. From the doorway, Dr. Kala entered the room carrying a thick folder of documents. The medical data you're claiming ownership of was gathered by independent health organizations, documenting the effects of industrial pollution. Your company has no legal claim to health records of the people you poisoned. The folder contained decades of medical research from veterinary physicians who'd been tracking the syndrome long before any corporate scientists got involved. Zara's grandmother had been one of the contributors, documenting traditional treatments and patient outcomes in handwritten journals that Dr. Kala had helped translate and digitize. Furthermore, Dr. Kala continued with the authority of someone who'd spent a lifetime fighting for her patients. Any attempt to claim ownership of this cure will be met with formal charges of crimes against sentient beings. The Galactic Health Council takes a very dim view of corporations that profit from diseases they caused. The legal threat hung in the air like a blade. Corporate lawyers were used to intimidating individuals and small organizations. But the Galactic Health Council had the power to shut down entire companies and seize their assets. Davidson and his team exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their shrinking confidence. After a few minutes of tense silence, he closed his tablet and stood up. "This isn't over," he said. But the words lacked conviction. "Megacorp Industries will explore all available legal options." "You do that," Dr. Chen replied calmly. "In the meantime, we'll be distributing the cure freely to anyone who needs it." After the lawyers left, the research facility felt like it could breathe again. The immediate threat was over, but more importantly, something fundamental had been settled between Zara and Dr. Chen. "You protected me before I even knew I needed protection," she said, still processing the depth of his foresight and care. "I told you once that everyone deserves a chance to save the people they love," he replied. "I meant everyone, including you." Her child came running into the laboratory at that moment, fully healthy and bursting with the energy that only recovered children possess. "Mama, Uncle Chen, Dr. Kala says I can help plant seeds in the garden tomorrow." Watching her little one's excitement, Zara felt something click into place inside her chest. This was what family looked like, not the desperate clinging of people with no other choices, but the voluntary coming together of people who chose to care for each other. "Uncle Chen," her child continued, tugging on Dr. Chen's coat, "are you going to stay with us forever?" Dr. Chen knelt down to the child's level, his expression serious but warm. "Would you like me to?" "Yes, and Mama too. We could all live together and help sick people get better." Out of the mouths of children came the simple truth that adults, often complicated beyond recognition, they had become a family, not through blood or obligation, but through choice and love and shared purpose. "What do you think, Mama?" Dr. Chen asked, looking up at Zara with hope and vulnerability in his eyes. "Ready to make this permanent?" 6 months later, Harmony Station had become the center of a medical revolution. The cure for veterinary wasting syndrome was being manufactured and distributed freely across the galaxy, saving thousands of children who might otherwise have suffered the same fate as Zara's little one. But more than that, their success had inspired other researchers to tackle similar problems. Corporate-caused diseases on a dozen worlds were being studied and treated by teams that followed the Harmony Station model, equal partnerships between scientists and affected communities with freely shared results that prioritized health over profit. Zara stood in their new family quarters, watching through the window as her child played in the garden with friends from 6 different species. Dr. Chen was reading in his favorite chair, occasionally looking up to answer questions or settle disputes with the gentle authority of someone who'd learned that love was the strongest foundation for any family. The official adoption papers were signed and filed. making their chosen family legally recognized across the galaxy. But the real bonds had been forged much earlier, in the moments when a desperate mother found unexpected kindness and a lonely man discovered that healing others could heal himself. Sometimes the best families weren't the ones you were born into, but the ones you build from hope, dedication, and the simple decision to care for each other no matter what challenges came your way. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found that love really could conquer the darkness that threatened to swallow everything good in the universe.